The Amy Coney Barrett hearings yesterday were another disaster for the Democrats, who seemingly have not learned their lesson from the disaster of the Kavanaugh hearings, where they lost. Remember the seats they lost? The Democrat senators who were involved in that hearing lost their seats. They haven't learned anything from that. Nothing. Even though the Democrats won the House back in that midterm election, the Democrats in Senate who were involved in the Kavanaugh hearings lost seats. They've learned nothing. Here is seriously the dumbest member of the United States Senate. I am not kidding. Asking a grotesque, disgusting question of an accomplished professional mother, lawyer, public servant, Amy Coney Barrett, of course, who was nominated for Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat. Listen to this grotesquity by the dumbest member of the U.S. Senate, bar none. There's not even a close second. Mazie Hirono, who's asking, she doesn't ask this question of Joe Biden, who has actually been accused of sexual assault. She asks, with zero evidence whatsoever any of this is true, she asks Amy Coney Barrett in front of her kids if she's ever been accused of sexually assaulting someone. Here we go. The dumbest member of the Senate never fails to disappoint us all, Mazie Hirono.
To ensure the fitness of nominees for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench or to any of the other positions for any of the committees on which they appear, I ask each nominee these two questions, and I will ask them of you. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator Hirono.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
Judge Barrett, do you think it is appropriate for justices to consider real-world impacts in their decision-making, as Justice Ginsburg noted in a number of her dissents?
Did she ask Joe Biden that question? Because the answer, unfortunately, would have to be yes. Remember Tara Reid, who accused Joe Biden? Accusations, nonetheless. Not saying they're true or not, but they are accusations. Joe Biden has been accused of sexual assault. Did she ask him that question too? No, because the answer would be yes. She asked this question of Amy Coney Barrett. She has no evidence any of that's true. I was on Parler yesterday commenting about this hearing after the show in live time. And I tweeted, "You can tune out now, Mazie Hirono speaking, only if you want to preserve neuronal mass in your brain, because you will slowly prune your dendrites and axons and lose probably 20 to 30 IQ points every syllable uttered from Mazie Hirono's mouth." Now, the destruction of the Democrats by Amy Coney Barrett, who was cool, calm, and as cool as the other side of the pillow yesterday, got even worse. Here was the just rabid Amy Klobuchar, just furious that she had to dare be faced with these questions. She does Amy Klobuchar, another Democrat radical who, how dare you offend me by being in my presence, Amy Coney Barrett. And this just proves to you again why Amy Coney Barrett's going to come out of this with flying colors, because she's a superior intellect. As again, Paula commented yesterday, she's like, can you imagine how Amy Coney Barrett feels? This superior intellect dealing with these morons? And I'm like, you're right. Like, it's got to be almost offensive to her, but she sits there and she plays their game. So here's Amy Klobuchar trying to catch Amy Coney Barrett in some kind of like a catch-22 here, where she's like, well, you keep talking about these super precedents. In other words, legal precedents that we wouldn't dare overturn, like desegregation and things like that, right? So she's trying to catch her and watch Amy Coney Barrett turn the table, and then Klobuchar tries to turn the table back, and Amy Coney Barrett just wrecks her because she's just smarter than Amy Klobuchar. Check this out.
Is Roe a super precedent?
How would you define super precedent?
I might have thought someday I'd be sitting in that chair. I'm not. I'm up here, so I'm asking you.
Okay, well, people use super precedent differently.
Okay.
The way that it's used in the scholarship and the way that I was using it in the article that you're reading from was to define cases that are so well settled that no political actors and no people seriously push for their overruling. And I'm answering a lot of questions about Roe, which I think indicates that Roe doesn't fall in that category. And scholars across the spectrum say that doesn't mean that Roe should be overruled. But descriptively, it does mean that it's not a case that everyone has accepted and doesn't call for its overruling. I don't
Okay,
think
so here's
This is, that was, I don't know if you say, let me translate what just happened there. Because just listening to it, you can tell Klobuchar's just getting angry because she's a numbskull and Amy Coney Barrett's a genius. What Amy Klobuchar was trying to do, radical Democrat senator, she's trying to get Amy Coney Barrett to talk about abortion to make a political viral ad for Twitter. She wants Amy Coney Barrett to say, I hate abortion. I'm going to overturn Roe versus Wade. And then so they can use that to run for office for Joe Biden and others. Is everybody following me? Coney Barrett is smarter than Amy Klobuchar by far. Amy Coney Barrett is not going to tip her hand on how she would rule on an abortion case. So Klobuchar comes back and says she's trying to take another angle. She's, well, you keep talking about these super precedents, these legal precedents, again, like desegregation and others. Well, isn't abortion that way too? In other words, trying to angle her into, Paul, is this making sense? Trying to angle her into talking about abortion. That's where the super precedent things comes from. So Coney Barrett, again, who's smarter than Klobuchar, who just gets frustrated and looks like a lunatic trying to question her, right? Coney Barrett says, well, if abortion was a super precedent, then why are you asking me about it? Genius. In other words, folks, listen, there's not a serious, even semi-serious, legal, political, or credible human being on the planet who is seriously talking about going back to segregation outside of the woke left crowds and their segregated dorm rooms. But I said serious people. Nobody's talking about that because it's insane. Because it's insane. Everyone alive with a functioning brain cell understands Jim Crow was an abhorrent disaster for America. Everyone. That is, yes, a super precedent. Klobuchar wants Amy Coney Barrett to acknowledge that the, air quotes, right to terminate a life in the womb is super precedent too. But whereas nobody's asking about going back to segregation, people do ask about abortion all the time. Which Coney Barrett brings up and says, well, they're not the same thing because you're asking me about it now. Genius. She's just 30 or 40 IQ points smarter than these complete imbeciles she has to answer questions from. Here's one final video. Sorry, I went out of order. I know I said I'd do them different. Apologizing to Paula. You wouldn't even know they're out of order, but I always tell her the order and then screw it up. Here's a great thing that you may say, well, Amy Coney Barrett's really smart. Clearly, she's got binders full of notes and everything, and she's got references and footnotes, and she's searching the internet and during breaks. And gosh, how do I answer that question? So John Cornyn, who is a terrific senator running for re-election in Texas, I encourage you to go out and vote for him. He says he noticed something. He noticed that during the hearing that Amy Coney Barrett's not referring to notes at all. And he says, Judge Barrett, would you mind showing us the notepad in front of you? We'd like to see, the notes you're using to answer all these questions. And this is what happened.
Most of us have multiple notebooks and notes and books and things like that in front of us. Can you hold up what you've been referring to in answering our questions? Is there anything on it?
That letterhead that says United States Senate.
That's impressive.
What an unbelievable human being. I mean, I'm not kidding. What an admirable, incredible example of what we can all aspire to be. A mom, a public servant, legal genius, role model, and she's got to answer questions again from, complete numbskulls like Mazie Hirono and Amy Klobuchar. Paula said it right. I'm not kidding. She's like, I can't imagine sitting there listening to these idiots In her head, she's got to be like, gosh, can we just get this disaster over with? She doesn't even have any notes. There's nothing on the note. She doesn't need them. She doesn't even need them. That's how intellectually lightweight these people are asking her questions.
You just heard Dan Bongino.